Hello, LinkedIn. Welcome. Great to see and have everybody here, wherever you're watching this. So it may be very late if you're in Asia. It's quite late actually. If you're in Middle East, it's borderline. I'm in Europe. It's 6 p.m. And then great to have Polly and Saar with us in the US. So that's about midday. Let me briefly introduce both of them, or reintroduce, because as you know, they came to the Makers and Movers last week. So I'll start with Polly first. She's the VP of Industry Outreach and Thought Leadership at Kinaxis. As many of you know, Kinaxis is one of the leading supply chain management and sales and operation planning software companies in the world. Polly, great to have you again, and thanks for making the time.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And Saar is the co-founder and CEO of Augury. Augury is the leading IoT and AI-driven machine health solution provider. Very excited to have you, Saar, and welcome, and thanks for taking the time as well.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So maybe I'll start with the first question that we had both on the platform as well as on YouTube. This came up, funnily enough, and it was framed like this: most organizations confuse digitalization to implementing an expensive software or an expensive service or solution. How do we kind of change that narrative also along the lines that not all of this needs to be very expensive? And how also do we build the people and the capabilities to enable that change and to enable that digital process? So maybe, Polly, I'll start with you, and happy to have your thoughts on this.
Sure. So this is something we like to describe at Kinaxis as a myth, really, because people believe that it has to be expensive, it has to take a long time, and that it's a barrier to pursuing digital transformation because people believe we need to do that, but it's going to be so big we can't do it and our employees aren't ready. And really, that's a myth. We have particularly accelerated in the last year and a half. We realized so many companies have come to us and said, we need help. We realized the weak spots we had as a result of the pandemic, and we need to do more now. And so we have figured out how to implement our software in 12 weeks or less, depending on the nature of what a company needs. So we can get companies to results within 12 weeks. The other thing I want to say is that part of what happens is that while we have many capabilities, and there are many capabilities any company would consider as part of a digital transformation, just giving companies, taking down the walls between functions and making them, getting rid of them at all, and making full transparency across the entire supply chain network for every part of the supply chain creates what one executive at Merck called the whoosh effect. And when he called it the whoosh effect, what he meant is that suddenly across the whole network, everybody could see the same information at the same time. And so you didn't have to send somebody an email, wait to see if they were on vacation for them to send you a spreadsheet back, and for you to get the information and try to figure out what you needed to do. You could go into the same place they could go and see the same information they could see. And so you didn't have to say, where's my truck? Because you could see where the truck was, and they got immediate results and were able to save considerably from having that information right away. And so it is a myth that it has to take that long. Things around upskilling your employees and change management, but for now I'll stop at that, just the initial comment.
Yes. Thank you. Saar?
Cool. So what we see, we work with a lot of leading manufacturing companies. And what we see is that digital transformation is actually not that digital, right? 70% of it is actually around change management and enabling, empowering the teams. And when you talk about change management, a part of it is compliance, right? Hey, you need to do this. But a big portion of it is also kind of selling that future, understanding the benefits to each and every person, and how technology will affect his or her role today, and also where does this take them, right? So in the case of Augury, just one example, we are physically on machines. We can detect malfunctions before they happen. And even if we give the best alert possible, if there's no one on the other side to take action, then we didn't really create any value and everyone loses, right? So how do we work between the customer, the partner, and the vendor, Augury in this case? How do we work together to build certain structures around kind of customer success in our lingo, to make sure that people are involved and they feel responsible for the success of this program or initiative. And then at the same time, if we kind of try to imagine, envision the future of what technology like ours and others will bring, and how that will impact the roles of everyone around the machines that they depend on to operate and maintain, that is really exciting, right? So as an example, one thing we're seeing is on the maintenance side, the industry is moving from compliance based, right? Today, most of the maintenance team gets a piece of paper every morning. This is what you need to do. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the monthly or annual preventive maintenance. Going from compliance to insight based. And then the role of the maintenance manager changes to actually be a risk manager, right? This algorithm told me that there's X% chance of the machine failing. How do I take that into account with a large purchase order that just came in, right? So it requires the reliability maintenance team to work hand in hand with operations, maybe engineering teams as well. And we're seeing those teams grow closer and closer, right? And to me, that's really exciting because you start telling that story and that share that future with the team, the people on the ground. And all of a sudden they have a personal vested interest in making this successful because it's a path for their own career growth, right? So that's kind of from the change management perspective, what we're seeing to be really, really successful. Understanding that it's not just a key executive making a decision and then everything just happens. No, there are actually hundreds of people that need to be involved on the production line in the facility level, and they're crucial for the success of any program.
I want to double click a little bit on the people side, because it's and I think you mentioned it yourself, Saar, in the presentation that 82% of all these projects, and Polly, I think you had a similar statistic that 82% of digital transformations fail.
Yeah.
And one of the key reasons is because they focus on the technology. They don't focus on the people and the change management, and getting the people on board with why are they doing this. So double clicking a little bit on this part, right? And maybe let's go to concrete examples. And it can be trivial, right? So I remember speaking to this trivial, as in maybe not trivial, common sense. I was speaking to this executive and she was saying that she had to change something at the manufacturing level on all the plants. Obviously, she started small with 1 or 2 plants. And she even had teams of people to tell her why it wouldn't work. So she would go speak to this almost like devil advocate teams, right?
Yeah.
Figure it out, then bounce ideas, come with solutions, and then that's how they rolled it, right? So I'm curious, maybe let's take more examples, because I'm sure both of you have seen things that work. So I'd love to, let's make positivity louder, so to speak. So Polly, you want to?
So I'd be happy to do that. Yes. So the first thing is I certainly agree that it's people, process, and technology. We need to be clear about what problem we're trying to solve. Buying new technology is not a problem to solve. Identifying what objectives you have, what benefits you're aiming for is the first step. And then go map your process and your people and your technology to those objectives. And so one of the good examples of this that I've seen is from global biopharmaceutical company Ipsen, based in Paris. And what they did is they decided, okay, we're going to undertake digital transformation. The supply chain was the first part of the company that agreed to do that. And they said, we are going to look at the skill, among other things, they said, we need to look at the skills that our people need to have. But we're not going to benchmark to what do we think we need today and where are people today. We're going to look at the digital future that we want to be at 5 years from now. What skills will we need then? What skills will our people have then? And then benchmark back from that. And so then they invested in their people and they made it very clear that we want you to fill out a survey. We don't want you to worry if you don't know how to do forecasting, that's okay. We only are asking you so that we can get you the skills you need to be successful and help us grow as a company. And so they worked backwards from that. They invested in their people. They saw that as a critical part of their transformation. And I have to say that whole process really showed the culture that supply chain was important. And they viewed supply chain pretty broadly, not just people who are in planning or procurement or logistics, but broadly across the business. And then work to get those skills and cross-fertilize them. And that as a result of that, they were the part of the company that did best during the pandemic in the last year. They had demand spikes of up to 70%, which you don't expect in a business when you're making drugs for rare diseases. You expect that to be a pretty steady state to flow. And demand spikes of 70%, the same production of material and transportation issues that any other company had, and they had 0 stockouts in the last year and a half, which is remarkable because I like to say that running out of toilet paper is something we all joke about, but running out of drugs for a rare disease that somebody's depending on their life for is not a joke. And so having zero stockouts is a result of the fact that they invested in the people, process, and technology needed for digital transformation. And now what they're finding is their peers across the rest of the company are saying, we want digital transformation too. We see how it's paid off for you.
Yeah, I can add to that. I mean, if you look, there are two levels here. There is how can I be successful in this ongoing transformation, and definitely, Polly mentioned kind of time to value earlier. The faster you can be successful, the faster you can get evidence that this is working, the easier it will be to get others on board, both the executives and the decision makers, but also the people on the ground. If you have healthy competition between two plants on who does better, who improves better, that's where you want to be, right? I think if we take a step back and look at more of the macro level where the industry is from a talent perspective, there's some real challenges, right? We had one leading paper company tell us that every year they lose 8% of their staff to retirement, and with it, they lose 25% of their knowledge. So their goal with technology and digitization is not to leapfrog their competitors. They can barely keep them in place, right, from a productivity perspective. And we have a huge generational gap, right, between the experienced technicians, domain experts, and whatnot that are slowly retiring, right? And then the industry for 2 decades didn't do a good enough job to pull in new talents, right? So if I just finished graduate from engineering school, do I go to manufacturing or to a hot, cool software startup, right? But I think now is the time to actually change that positioning and how the world views manufacturing, because manufacturing became a technology-heavy industry, or is becoming, right, a technology-heavy industry. And the faster we can make that shift and pull in new talent into the industry, the better we will all be, right? So I think that's another aspect of the people side, right, of the talent side, that also needs to be part of the conversation. We were hearing, I dislike the term the Great Resignation, which I'm sure you've heard, but we are seeing a fundamental shift in how people view their work-life balance. And I believe that through technologies that enable more remote employees or a more hybrid approach, we can actually adapt the jobs and the roles on the plant floor or even in the corporate office to appeal to a broader talent pool. Right? And I think that's one of the key things that the industry needs to get right. And the onus is not just on the end customers, on the manufacturing companies, it's also on the vendors and maybe also on the government and education system, right? On how do we all band together to make that work.
Love the point, Saar, and I don't know if you know, but Eltel Global is at the core. We are an executive search and recruitment firm, and talent is part of our business, but it's also something that I'm deeply passionate about. And I don't come, whilst we do only supply chain roles, I have not worked in a factory, right? I know that your background was in Intel, Polly, you come from a long industry background. I didn't come from it, right? But the more I learn about it, and especially it has really accelerated in the last 4 to 6 years, maybe, I don't know, I've been around for 10 years around this industry. The changes are massive. And I mean, most of the factories are super. I mean, the sensors, the good, the machines, everything is interconnected. IoT is making a huge difference. All the systems, the digital twins, right? You literally have the factory in the cloud, right? And you can optimize it in real time, and the flow of goods, the flow of information, the impact that you can make from a sustainability perspective, from so many things. I was talking to somebody in transport, and he was saying that his view is that he's enabling global trade. I think it's a huge opportunity that we have also with supply chain being front page of all the newspapers nowadays, to bring and make louder these stories of, what's the purpose? How are we actually contributing? How are we helping? What's the higher meaning to all of this, right? Beyond the making things that we all need, of course, right? We didn't die of hunger during COVID because all the supply chain professionals kept this going. So that's to your point, that I think in turn will attract talent from, okay, you don't need to go only to banks and to Google, right? You know, there's some awesome jobs within supply chain realm that you can make a dent, right? So
I have some good news on that, Radu. CSCMP, which is the certifying and professional organization based in the U.S., did a survey that they do every year of every other year of young people under 30. And in 2017, 10% of young people said they go into supply chain because it can make a positive impact. In 2019, 13% said I go into supply chain because I can make a positive impact. In 2021, 58%. 58% of young people said, up from 13% only 2 years previously, that they go into supply chain because they can make a positive impact. And that's because of what you just said, Radu. They've seen the results in the last year and a half of the fact that even though the headline I hate is not the Great Resignation, but that supply chains are failing or supply chains are a problem, because I think that people who don't work in supply chain don't realize just how much supply chain professionals have done in the last year and a half to be as successful as we have all been. And that is a credit to the profession and the fact that we've had nearly insurmountable challenges we've managed to surmount anyhow. And so the fact that people see that can make a positive impact, that can have a really interesting career across a wide variety of parts of supply chain is great news for helping us perhaps to fill this gap that we all know that there's a lot of data that says that there are more people retiring and not enough people to fill the seats. So hopefully that will be turning the table now, because supply chain is a great place to build a career.
And look, Saar, just before you go, right? So Sheldon agrees with you, and I like the reframe. I call it the great realignment. Good reframe, Sheldon. Thanks for thanks for sharing that. And I'll pull this question. So one, because actually there's two parts of the question, right? So Richard, how about sourcing talent from similar verticals like freight brokerage? And then his second part of the question is, from my experience, if you have worked within freight transportation, you are not highly sought after candidate for a lot of supply chain firms. Before you go into this, I'll just jump in, Richard, to say, or to politely challenge this assumption in a way that, and obviously I don't know your background and I don't know your full experience, but I did speak recently to an executive in transportation, ocean freight. He had 6 or 7 offers. I think specifically transportation and global logistics right now is a complete mess. Well, not complete mess. Okay, it's an overstatement. I'm a sales guy. Maybe I'm using bombastic words, right? But it's such a pain for so many companies.
Yeah.
That it's never probably been a better time to be in that. And I think there's a lot of opportunities. But anyways, Saar, Polly, maybe your take on this.
Well, what I would say is that from a talent perspective, in general, if an organization is not willing to think creatively about talent, it may not be the best match for you. And I think one of the things I like to highlight for job candidates is to remember that you're trying to get a job, but you're also trying to get a good job in a place where you need to be. And if an organization is too rigid in their assumptions, so I've spent a lot of time working in the AI and machine learning space, and this part of the workforce often is known for sometimes having limited views of, for example, only hiring from certain universities and certain degrees. And I've been advocating for years now that good talent can come into the advanced analytics data science space from a wide variety of disciplines. One of the best data scientists I've ever worked for had almost finished his PhD in anthropology. And he said that the pattern recognition that he had to do to match shards and the technology he had to use to do that was very appropriate for data science. So my point is the applicability of skill sets and not necessarily where they come from. So if you are, it is important to make sure when you're pitching yourself that you use language that is transferable and not limited to your specific space. But as long as you can show transferable skills, then a company that isn't interested in you, I would suggest might not be one you should be interested in either.
I don't have a lot to add to that. I definitely agree that we need to reimagine the types of personas and profiles of people that go into manufacturing and supply chain. And I would argue that if you're a data scientist just graduating today from a big league college or university, and you want to work on an impactful problem to solve that has a ton of data that no one really understands how to use, supply chain manufacturing is one of those places where there's so much data that we haven't yet been able to harness. We're seeing more and more, companies and solutions come up, and there's still a long way to go. So I really hope to see more people from different backgrounds come into this kind of problem, because we need all the help we can get to solve it.
Saar, I couldn't agree with you more. Our company has given guest lectures to more than 4,000 students in the last year and a half. I'm giving a guest lecture at Carnegie Mellon this afternoon to a group of engineers. And I guarantee you that one of the things I always say is the supply chain is a great place to apply those skills.
No, super exciting to hear. I'll bring this question again from the event platform, and maybe I'll start with you, Saar, because I know that even in the video for the event, you had some fairly impressive return on investment, right? So, and I'll come to you afterward, Polly, with where the customer was shocked of how much your tech, again, maybe it's not the right tech, but solution. Let's call it solution, because again, it's not about the technology necessarily. Solution improved their operation.
Yeah, I think today people are not shocked anymore, because we have a lot of evidence and case studies as we go into accounts. I think early on, Colgate is one example where within 4 months in one facility, our initial rollout, they paid for a full year in 6 facilities, right? So the ROI was very large and also very immediate. They claimed that they saved close to 3 million tubes of toothpaste in one malfunction that we helped them avoid. Just a couple of weeks ago in the event in Makers and Movers, we had PepsiCo share the kind of the story from Frito-Lay, where we helped them manufacture 1 million pounds of Cheetos and Doritos, right? So the value is very, very easy to quantify, simply because the problem existed for 2 or 3 decades, right? Machines fail. We know how to quantify it. We just got used to that as an assumption. Yeah, machines fail. Now let's have more spare parts. Machines fail. Now let's have more overhead in our inventory and whatnot. Well, what if they just stopped failing? How would you reimagine the way you operate? So those are just 2 or 3 examples. We have maybe take it down to a kind of the machine level, not the capacity level. In a paper company, they have one of the biggest components, but one of the bigger rolls is called the Yankee. And we had a Yankee drive, the big motor, and this thing is like 3 meters high, 10 foot high, where we said, hey, there's a problem here. An imminent failure is coming. And the maintenance technicians came in, they put their hand on the machine and said, no, it's okay, I can't feel anything, right? So they brought in the manufacturer of that motor, that machine, and they tore it apart, and surprise, surprise, they found exactly what we said is happening, right? Now, the results of a catastrophic failure here, has obviously downtime effects and capacity, but also safety. If this thing blows up and people are around it, there's kind of real damage that can be done and injuries that could happen. So I think that's kind of where the industry is, right? And it's like going to the doctor and he puts his hand on your forehead and says, oh, you don't have a fever, you're good, versus one that takes you to take an MRI and X-ray and whatnot. And I think that's a mindset shift that the industry needs to go through.
Great examples, Saar. And I remember this meme that was circulating in the COVID time, where, obviously we've gotten used to being measured the temperature, right? And then there was this teacher that was just measuring the temperature. Oh, you're okay. Oh, you're okay. Or so it's kind of, your story reminds me of that. It's like, I feel it's okay. All right, man. Good that you feel it's okay, but can we have some data approach based approach to this feeling? So anyways, Polly, also when you, like you said, the whoosh effect, right? And when from an integrated business planning, the results can be staggering if you do it right. So maybe share a little bit also from your Kinaxis experience.
Sure. One of my favorites is from a company called Technicolor. They make content creation and optical disc manufacturing and distribution, and they're based out of France. And one of the things they found is they were having a real problem with the parts of their supply chain being disconnected. And so sales, for example, would go out and make what they thought would be a sale and put in an order for some inventory without checking with operations about whether or not operations actually had the capacity to deliver on that inventory. And that was a problem. And so what was happening is other parts of the supply chain were recognizing this would happen. And they were having to buffer so they could meet the customer expectations, and they were buffering with extra inventory. And it was also creating all kinds of internal battles. And so when they implemented our rapid response software, they literally called it a peacekeeping system. Peacekeeping system, because what they said is that once everybody could see the same information at the same time, it actually changed behavior. So the salespeople began recognizing, well, maybe I want my customer to be happy. If we can't meet their expectations that I promised, they're not going to be happy. So maybe I negotiate with sort of what we can promise with what's actually available, because they could see it across the whole system. A secondary benefit is that they were no longer what they were doing, what they called praying for margins. So literally their finance people, they could only see costs at the bottom line. They couldn't see what the actual profit would be, and they just prayed it would all work out. But what their finance people were finding is that that was not working. And so using a point in time of Q1 2022, they were able to save $120 million in inventory for planning for that quarter, just from the fact that they weren't having to buffer nearly as much anymore, and everybody could see the same thing. And even more shocking to them, we actually heard from an executive from that company recently who said, literally, I have a problem now. It used to take me so long to kind of get my financial view of what's happening that I spent hours doing that. I actually literally have to, I liked your line, Saar, about reimagining how you operate, because he's saying I have to reimagine how I operate, because what I used to spend all this time on trying to get all this information together that's now one place, that time is gone. Like it's free. I can do different things, and I literally have to think about how do I reorganize my time. So having better view across the entire supply chain, reducing inventory, a peacekeeping system among employees, making customers more satisfied, having greater profitability, and having time freed up so that people can, when we go back to people, process, and technology, the technology should enable what people can do best. And so if we free up time for people, they can pay more attention to the higher value things that machines cannot do, machines and math and fancy algorithms. And that's the benefit of the shock that they got to their system. It was a good shock.
Great example. As we're drawing to an end, I have a question that maybe is a trickier question. So what would you, if you had a magic wand, right? You remember that question? If you had a magic wand, what would you wish your prospect clients stop doing, and instead of that, maybe start doing something else? So I'll give you some, but you can't use my own examples, please. So, like, okay, there's a lot of organizations, I don't want to say most, which are very risk averse. There's a lot of politics involved, a lot of people, watching their backs and their jobs, and they don't want to take risks, right? They just, and sometimes the greatest, barrier to new things is that they just want to their comfortable jobs. Why should I shake the boat too much? I don't want to, right? That can be one, right? There's many others. So I don't want to give you more ideas, but you know where I'm going with this, right? So I'd love your thoughts. What should they stop doing, and what should they start focusing on more?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. I think risk is now maybe still an issue, but if you actually look at surveys, most companies today have a digitization strategy, or they're investing in digital solutions. What I would really want them to stop doing is looking at technology and start looking at use cases, right? So we're going to invest in AI. Well, AI is a tool, it's not an outcome. How do you know if you're successful or not if you can't measure it, right? So shifting the conversation to what are the big pain points that I have? What do I need to solve? And then which technology or technologies together can help me avoid that pain? And then you can set kind of key metrics and KPIs and measure success along the way. I think that is one kind of shift that needs to happen in the mindset of the industry.
Thank you.
So what I would say is, echoing back to our original comments or conversation around people, process, and technology, I'd say that too often people may expect too much from the technology and not enough from their people. And what I mean by that is, I agree with Saar's comment. AI is a tool, not an outcome. It's also not a magic bullet. And no tool, no software, no technology is a magic bullet. It's not going to fix everything. People believe sometimes that All we need is the right technology. It's going to solve everything. And yet they undervalue an incredible resource they have, which is their people. And so if you invest in both technology and people, the technology, as the example I just gave from Technicolor, you invest in technology, you can get more time available for your people, and your people can do things. You know, I like to say that AI, there are three things that we humans do for sure, but that AI cannot do. Humans can, AI cannot create context without from abstraction. It cannot collaborate, and it cannot create a conscience. And humans all can do that. Humans, we want to give humans at their highest and best use, collaborating, coming up with ways to solve exceptions, coming up with new ways to deal with business and innovation. Let's invest more in our people, believe that they can do things, and invest in the technology, but not expect it to be a solution, especially if we don't put people, process, and technology in place.
If I can have another want, I know I'm cheating here, but another thing I would want the industry to see is how do we work together and collaborate, right? And put it differently, companies need to understand what their core is, what they have to keep kind of close to their chest and develop in-house and their own data science teams, versus where others have already done it and maybe they should partner, right? We mentioned Colgate, so we had Warren Pruitt he's a VP of Global Services and Engineering Services at Colgate. Him and Mike Corbo, the Chief Supply Chain Officer. And they told us, look, I don't want to win in the market because I'm the best at detecting bearing wear. I want to have more innovative products. I want to have better marketing. I want to understand my customers better. But if there's a basic level of diagnostics or solutions that can help lift the whole industry forward and have real impact and sustainability and really build a better world, we should all collaborate together and see how we lift each other, and versus try to compete on those kind of more, I wouldn't say smaller things, but understand what your core is and then how you can collaborate with the industry and all the rest, so we can all kind of grow together. I think that's another crucial point.
Love it, Saar. Could not agree more. Yeah, there's a lot of good talk, and I'll finish on this note, right? Again, I think I've given this example before, but I was at a shipping conference, and there was one person that asked, "So how can we get shipping lines to collaborate?" This was 2-3 years ago. It wasn't even now. Now they're all enjoying and having a good party. But and then the answer came, "Well, how we get them to collaborate is by an alien attack on Earth, because then they will definitely collaborate against the aliens." So I'm like, okay, I mean, beyond the irony, but that's, so a lot of people talk about collaboration, but now we all have all of us, no matter the company, no matter the race, we have a dooming climate issue on our hands. Glasgow did some things, I guess. but we all need to come together, because it's not targets that you can achieve by yourself, right? No company can do it, right? You have vendors, suppliers, clients, and so on, right? So I think we need to really go beyond the nice words and talk about collaboration. And to your point, and to many other people's points, we should really do it. Yeah, don't collaborate on the core, right? It's fairly straightforward, but there's so many other things, right, that we can do and we should do. So on that note, I want to highlight, thanks for bringing it up, Saar. Let's hope and let's do it. Polly, both of you, Saar, thank you for joining. Have a great end of the year and a great 2022 ahead, and stay healthy.
Thank you for the invitation.